Middle East affairs. Somalia support 2 on Twitter. Al-Qaeda. Since 9/11, the existence of Al-Qaeda has puzzled the world, and this highly mysterious group has since become a media celebrity and household name. Many viewers are taught that Al-Qaeda was created due to 9/11, but that is clearly not the case. Then how did it all begin if it's not 9/11? During the Afghan war with the Soviet Union, there were clear U.S. interests to prevent a Soviet spread towards the Middle Eastern oil fields, and India and Pakistan. There were Islamic groups in Afghanistan fighting the Soviet Union, but clearly not all of them were in the U.S. interests. The U.S. decided that not all groups in Afghanistan were appropriate for funding. So the United States of America decided to literally create a military camp to sift through fighters, and so a new joint venture was begun called the Al-Qaeda, translated as the camp. The pro-USA nations, Qatar and UAE and Saudi Arabia and Turkey, were the principal nations that helped the USA with regional expertise, and they would select the fighters and train them and later deliver them to the camp for U.S. inspection. Al-Qaeda did almost nothing in the Afghan-Soviet war. All the fighting was done by other groups of foreign fighters, who came as civilians, and also a major part were the Afghan tribes themselves. It was just this obscure group of Al-Qaeda that would be presented as the success story for it to set new standards in how the local populations of the region could be recruited safely by foreign powers. Al-Qaeda lost its purpose as a military force after the Afghan-Soviet war. For many years the project remained dormant until a new client appeared. And it was Zionist groups that saw an excellent opportunity to recruit regional assets to do operations for them throughout the entire Muslim world secretly. The same pro-USA nations, Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Turkey, were now serving the Zionist cause. Various video evidences exist of Adam Perlman and Yusuf Khattab, as well as other Zionists, that would continue the project called Al-Qaeda. From witness accounts of many ex-Al-Qaeda fighters, they were paid beyond anything they could have earned within their nations. They were sent on programming missions, and the Qaeda fighters were allowed to kill some foreign fighters. As one ex-Qaeda explained, it all felt like a setup, and we were handed the enemies, and after killing a few, they would make us feel confident that Al-Qaeda was indeed fighting invaders. Their movements were strictly controlled, and they were always led around by intelligence agencies that would pretend to have common interests. This tactic is commonly used to make the patsies believe they are fighting the enemy, while in reality they are actually working for them. These are confidence-building methods. And the reasons for all this programming is to turn them against their own people. For example, there is a man called Sheikh Saleh. He is really anti-Zionist, and he is Muslim. After Al-Qaeda fighters have gone through their programming, they are confident in everything their commanders tell them. Soon the commanders tell the Al-Qaeda fighters that Sheikh Saleh is not Muslim and he's working for the Zionists. They believe words of the commander because of the programming they had experienced. The Al-Qaeda commander himself is a Zionist. The recruits are always very young and from poor backgrounds. Al-Qaeda recruits will now be ordered to kill Sheikh Saleh. Essentially, this whole operation was the very reason for all the programming. The true Al-Qaeda fighting forces are actually just intelligence agents that are doing missions on both sides of the fence. You could be killed by intelligence agencies because they claim you are a terrorist, or intelligence agencies attack targets while acting like Al-Qaeda terrorists. The Al-Qaeda army is filled with intelligent agents, and mercenaries and youth that have been programmed. Muslims and the Middle East have suffered and died from Al-Qaeda more than any other people or region. Yet it is also Muslims and the Middle East that are being invaded supposedly because of Al-Qaeda. There were no Al-Qaeda in Iraq before the USA invasion, but as is always the case, Al-Qaeda appeared only after. There were no Al-Qaeda in Somalia before the USA invasion, and again, as always, they arrived after. There were no Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan before the USA involvement to fight Soviets, but they did appear after U.S. involvement. There were no Al-Qaeda in Libya before the USA invasion, but today we see that all Al-Qaeda have reappeared within the NTC after the NATO involvement. The people of the Middle East are highly aware that Al-Qaeda has only killed Muslims, and has never done anything more than justify invasions and assassinations of anything opposing NATO and Zionists. Al-Qaeda itself has destabilized nations and killed key figures of unity and is constantly bombing civilians. For example, the Al-Qaeda in Iraq has struck most of their explosions on Sunni mosques, and yet these same Al-Qaeda are used as an excuse to attack the Sunnis community even more. This deadly scenario has been hailed as the greatest intelligence victory of the century. The occupied people are attacked by Al-Qaeda and foreign forces in turn relentlessly. This is the current situation of Somalia and Afghanistan and Libya and Iraq. Al-Qaeda groups are only attacking the civilian occupied people. Foreign intelligence agencies and NATO are only attacking civilian occupied people. The media is both promoting the terrorist groups that attack civilians and promoting further attacks by NATO and intelligence agencies on civilian populations. In conclusion, Al-Qaeda is both a colonial tool to secretly justify attacks on a civilian-occupied population, but also a tool to actually covertly assault any target.